and welcome to the Rockstar Yoga Bon Jovi series. My name is Suzanne Beenakkers and I feel completely different from 5 days ago. So 5 days ago it was Good Friday and I had my my coming to terms with the fact that I was never going to be a proper entrepreneur and that my art or my purpose work was so strong that I just had to choose for that, and that it was not really an option to alter it, to make it monetizable or to limit it or to clean it up. So because I had been living in that fantasy or in that hope for 48 hours or something, Good Friday was really, it was a really hard landing. And at that time I didn't really have an idea about what would come next. And ultimately what came next was like a couple of days where I just just kind of just brought closure on everything. There were some business things that had to, that had been changing in with the idea of becoming a real company named Rockstar Yoga and cleaning up my act. So I had to kind of just go by all those things and bring that back to where I wanted it to be, which was basically where it had been before I got it into my head that it wasn't good enough. And then on Monday I really, I got to work. I just said, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create every day. So even though Rockstar Yoga is still my priority, so that means I have a blog, I have a Facebook page, and I have this channel. Even though that's still a priority, the other things, are also important. And the only thing I'm going to commit myself to is that I'm going to create every day. So if you're interested in that, on the Facebook page from Rockstar Yoga, I will be creating or writing an art journal every day about what my creations were that day. So that's going really well, focusing on creation, not focusing on cleaning up my act. It's never a good focus to clean up your act. But there was one thing about that video on Friday, and it was just, I mentioned it like really kind of like small. I said that I didn't like These Days album, or I didn't really emotionally connect to it, and therefore I didn't like it. And that I didn't get back on the Bon Jovi wagon until Bounce. And I didn't know then, but I said that Bounce was from 2005. That wasn't true. It was 2002. And I wondered how it was possible that an album that I had bought and liked, that I didn't have it in my mind, in my head, what the date was. And then I realized it's because for me it was like 1995 was important, or I could remember it because that was when These Days came out, and I was like okay, I'm not really into Bon Jovi anymore. And then there was Bounce at, how do you say that in English? T is X. So at a unspecified time. And then there was late 2018 when I bought a ticket for Bon Jovi and caught up with their work. So that was, I got to know This House Is Not For Sale, really, really liked it. Like Burning Bridges very, very much. But everything between, Keep the Faith and then These Days, but Keep the Faith was the last album I had liked. And then December 2018 was when I bought a ticket. In between that area, like in between 2000 and 2010, there was one other record that I liked. So it was because it was all so far apart that I probably didn't like remember the date when I had that brief reconnection with Bon Jovi. And so even though everything kind of like, you know, settled really nicely after Friday's video, I was like, yeah, that was strange, right? That you have such a record balance, because they were extremely productive from 2000 to 2010, 2009 I should say, but they were extremely productive. Lots of albums, lots of tours, lots of special projects. Why, from all those things, did I pick Bounce? You know, why did I know? Well, first of all, I had this album, and from the other albums I didn't have it. I didn't have them. I had this one, and I knew I didn't know the other ones. Why this one? So I listened to it again today, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I immediately saw, hey, this is really strange. There are no songs on this album that they still play. So it's probably their least favorite album, I don't know. No songs on here that they played. Or like not on the last tour. No, I don't think any. No, don't think so. No. Well, anyway, so that was the first thing I noticed, and it's extremely heavy. It's extremely grungy. I think it must be their heaviest record, and I was intrigued. I was like, oh, but how does this album compare to others? What do other fans think? What kind of reviews did the album get? And I have to say that I didn't do some kind of extensive research, but I did come up with two very interesting facts. One is it was sparked by the events on September 11th. So they just came off their tour in August, and it was the One Wild Night tour, and they didn't intend to immediately go write another album, and then they had the events of 9/11, and it just inspired them to start creating again. So 1 year after, in October 2002, I will now never forget that date because I can now tie it to the events that happened. They had their album ready, and it was so emotionally, and it was so dark because it had been such a dark time. And the other interesting fact is that I've heard that it was even heavier. So the music was even heavier on the album originally, and the record company just refused to release it that way. So I don't know if that's true. Maybe it's kind of like an urban myth, but yeah. So those are the two things that really struck me as it explained to me why I really liked it. It was the heaviest of Bon Jovi records, and part of it had been so heavy, the music had been so strong that the music company didn't want to release it, and it was extremely emotional because it was tied to 9/11, and the reviews were not really good. So what I've read about the album was a lot of people liked the songs on the first half of the album, but not on the end, or kind of like, that on the end it got more, it wasn't as consistent anymore, and the second half of the album ultimately prohibited it from being a great Bon Jovi album. And I realized that too is probably why I like it. that These Days was not just, maybe they were really emotionally involved in These Days. I haven't looked into it. They say it was a very socially conscious record, their first really socially conscious record, These Days. But I don't feel that deep anger and anxiety the way I do with Bounce. But even if it had the same emotional purge from the band, even if the emotional connection from the band was as close or as big with These Days as it was on Bounce, the reason why I think I would have liked Bounce, I would still have liked Bounce better, is because it's not perfect. Where Bon Jovi is, at least in Europe, regarded as the best Bon Jovi album ever released. There's a lot of fans who are just, for example, not even Bon Jovi fans, but they really love that record. There are Bon Jovi fans who stopped listening to Bon Jovi after These Days. So it was a perfect record. And I don't think I like perfection. I think I liked Bounce even better because it had that combination of that really deep emotional connection and that music that just needed to come out, and the rawness of an album that's not perfect, and that's not, the songs on this record are not even played anymore, and it's, it is the record that, well, people didn't forget it, but it was not a record where people talk about the way they talk about These Days. And I realized that I want to start listening to Bon Jovi Bounce a lot. That for me, this album, because it is so closely related to the tragedies of 9/11, is for me the perfect record to really dive deep into. And that brought me to another album, which is This House Is Not For Sale. I know that when I started listening to Bon Jovi again, December 2018, and I listened to This House Is Not For Sale, it deeply moved me. It was so, it really moved me. And so after listening to this record and realizing the historical context where it was created, I realized, okay, but then why do I like This House Is Not For Sale so much? Why do I like Burning Bridges so much, which is a very small album that was released 1 year before This House Is Not For Sale? And then I realized, of course, it's because of Richie. It's because Richie left in 2013, and that just caused, pain and despair, and it was released. I can't say it was healed because I don't know if it was healed, but it was processed. It was released on those two records. And I mean, I really feel bad for, being, kind of like, it's kind of strange to admire a band that is so good with its anthems and its upbeat songs of hope. And I realized that I liked the 3 records, Bounce, Burning Bridges, and This House Is Not For Sale, that just had this deep emotional hurt underneath. And the 3 of them were all records that probably ultimately will not be remembered or will not be played. And This House Is Not For Sale, it had, the show I went to had one song from that album. Burning Bridges, I think, did we have We Can Run? Well, there was a song called, I don't know if I have the title exactly right, it was something like We Can Run. I think that was the title, and it's on the Burning Bridges album, but it's also as a bonus track on This House Is Not For Sale. So either way, those three albums, Bounce, Burning Bridges, This House Is Not For Sale, do not, you know, it's very possible that in 5 years or in 10 years, none of the songs will be played, albums will not be very much remembered. And yeah, they are the albums that I really like. So I've decided to, well, first of all, really study and listen to Bounce a lot, and the other two albums as well. You know, they will be my, kind of like my sanctuary, my musical sanctuary in these times of the crisis, and, you know, being home and contemplating, and yeah, so it was really, today was really for me a reconnection with, you know, an old friend, an old CD that I had not really studied for a very, very long time. And realizing that I have, yeah, that those three albums will be my focus for, you know, the upcoming weeks. Bounce, Burning Bridges, This House Is Not For Sale. We're also working towards the 15th of May when their new album will be released. I assume that it's still on the roll, on the planning to have that released. That was the original plan. So that will be interesting as well, to see if, yeah, well, you know, I'm just looking forward to having the album. But now, looking back, I think there's a pretty high chance that the crisis now will inspire Bon Jovi to get to work very soon. Maybe even before the next album is released, that they're already so inspired by everything that's going on that they will start writing, just like they have done with Bounce when they started writing, when they had originally planned to rest after the tour. So we'll see, and I'm just really, I mean, I was already very happy today, but when I connected with this album and realized, you know, started studying it and discovered the story behind it, yeah, I really like that. So if you like it too, you know, start listening to Bounce. I'm really curious what you hear, and how you connect to it, how you relate to it. Okay, see you next time. Bye.